My name is Selah Kincaid. I am 71, the sort of woman who still presses a hem with steam and patience, who labels pantry jars because order calms a heart that has known too much noise. I learned neatness from a life that required mending worn cuffs, frayed budgets, strained silences. Today, I wore a lilac dress I had stitched to fit my shoulders just right. A soft cardigan waiting on the passenger seat in case the river wind turned sharp. The navigation voice kept repeating, "You have arrived at your destination," as if certainty were an address you could buy. I slowed along the edge of Sauvie Island, where the road thinned and the fields opened like a held breath. I expected bunting on a fence, cars nose to nose in a grassy lot, music spilling out of a barn door. The only thing moving was the grass, and the grass did not clap for anyone. I eased the car onto the shoulder and turned off the engine. No venue, no shuttle, no florist vans. A wide quiet pressed against the windows. I looked down at my phone. The last message from my daughter sat bright on the screen. "Follow this address." "Mom, that's where the wedding is." I touched the link again, even though I did not need to. The pin sat in the middle of an unnamed patch of green, confident and wrong. I stepped out carefully, holding the skirt above the weeds. The field smelled of dry stems and the river somewhere beyond the trees. A thin stem snagged my hem, and I freed myself with the same small motion I once used to untangle my daughter's hair when she was small. The memory pricked like a hidden thorn. Sweet and sore, I called her. The ring cut off after a few beats, then went to silence. I called again and again. On the fourth try, the call went straight to voicemail. I tried the coordinator number from the invitation and reached a recording about event hours. I tried the florist listed on the card and reached nothing at all. In my chest, the careful rhythm I practiced all morning stumbled. The wind lifted the corner of the printed program I had set on the dashboard. My eyes went back to the map. A small detail shifted into focus the way a seam shows when the light hits it. The location pin sat inside a screenshot, no pulsing dot. No live blue trail, just the hard edge of a captured image. My thumb stayed still. A heat rose through me and then fell away, dropping through the floor of my ribs. I had sold old costume jewelry to buy the china I left wrapped on the back seat. I had pressed this dress before dawn. I had practiced a greeting that would not embarrass either of us. And here was the truth. Plain as the field before me, I had been sent nowhere on purpose. I set the phone face down. The wind moved across the grass in long strokes, and my breath finally followed it. I smoothed my skirt, got back into the car, and turned the key. The engine caught. I eased the car into gear and pulled away from the empty place, steering toward the road where help might be found. I had just pulled onto the shoulder again when a dusty silver sedan slowed beside me. The driver leaned out his window. A man, maybe in his 30s with dark hair, pulled into a small tie. "Ma'am, you all right?" he asked. I hesitated, still gripping the steering wheel. "I'm fine, just a little lost." He nodded toward the field behind me. "Not much to find out here?" "You break down no?" My voice cracked. So I cleared it. "My daughter sent me this address. It was supposed to be her wedding venue." His brows rose. "You mean a wedding today? There's nothing around for miles. I can see that." I said, trying to smile, but it didn't hold. "I think I may have the wrong place." He parked and stepped out. His jacket was worn at the cuffs. A driver's badge clipped to his shirt pocket read, "Rafi Alvar, PDX Rideshare." "You want me to check it?" he offered. I handed him my phone. "She texted this link this morning." He opened it, then frowned. "It's just a screenshot. No live location." "Do you remember the name of the venue? It was something with mill," I murmured. "Sawmill, windmill, I can't recall." Rafi looked thoughtful, then reached into his car for his own phone. My cousin works for Juniper Cho Florals. She's doing setups all over the island today. He tapped a few buttons, then spoke into the speaker. Luce, hey, it's me. You got a wedding near Savi right now. Yeah, what's the venue called? I listened to a faint voice through the phone. Cheerful and busy. Rafi nodded slowly, glancing at me. She says there's only one big wedding today on the island. The Sawmill Atrium off Northwest Reeder Road. My hands clenched on my purse. So it's real. She's really getting married today. He lowered the phone. Looks that way. You want me to take you there? It's maybe 15 minutes. I stared at the dashboard clock. I had no idea how far along the ceremony might be. If she didn't want me there, I said softly, I'll still go quietly. I just need to see her walk once more. Rafi nodded. No pity in his expression, only a kind patience. Then let's go find her. I followed him back onto the road, the empty field shrinking in my mirror until it was only a blur of brown and wind. Ahead, a new address waited, and I drove toward it with my heart heavier than my hands. The Sawmill Atrium appeared at the end of the road, all glass and timber, sunlight catching on the windows like polished water. I followed Rafi's car until we reached a small parking lot filled with polished sedans and white shuttles. He stepped out first, pointed toward the main doors, and said quietly, Go ahead, ma'am. I'll wait until you're inside. Inside. The lobby smelled of roses and perfume. Music drifted from deeper in the hall, bright laughter riding above it. I found a young woman behind a tall counter, her headset tilted, clipboard in hand. Her smile was professional, the kind that stops just short of warmth. Good afternoon, I began, keeping my voice steady. I'm here for the Kincaid Morell wedding. Selah Kincaid, mother of the bride. Her fingers moved across her tablet. Of course. Let me check your seat assignment. A pause. Then another, longer one. Her polite mask shifted. I'm sorry, Mrs. Kincaid, you're not listed among the immediate family guests. I should be, I said gently. She's my only child. She glanced over her shoulder, lowering her voice. It says here overflow room B. Overflow, I repeated, the word landing like a small stone, just through that side corridor. You'll still have a view through the open arch. Her tone tried to soften it, but the sentence still carried distance. I nodded. Thank you. Ms. Vargas? Noemi Vargas. I'll have someone bring you a program. I walked toward the smaller room. The laughter grew louder as I passed the main doors, but no one looked my way. A man in a tuxedo brushed by. Murmuring into an earpiece, two bridesmaids in silver gowns floated past. One saying, Her mom's not coming. Right. The other answered, That's what she said. My hands tightened around the gift I carried. The box felt heavier now, the fine china set I had spent nearly a year paying for in small installments. I placed it on a side table beside the guest book. The tag, facing up, to Isolde and Keaton, with love. Mom, in overflow room B. Round tables lined the walls, and a screen streamed the ceremony from next door. I was seated near the kitchen doors beside two women who whispered introductions neither of us remembered a moment later. Their eyes darted to the screen, then away, through the archway. I could see part of the head table. Isolde's laughter reached me, light and careless, her hand resting on Keaton's arm. She looked radiant, free of the weight I'd carried for both of us all these years. I sat very still, afraid that if I moved, the sound of her joy might disappear completely. The ceremony began with soft piano music that barely reached the overflow room. From where I sat, the sound was faint, like a song remembered rather than played. On the screen, the camera panned to my daughter. Isolde's smile looked effortless. Her bouquet shimmered with pale roses, and the guests behind her leaned in as if drawn toward her light. At my table, one of the women murmured, "They say her mom didn't come." The other replied, "Maybe that's for the best. Weddings are stressful enough." Neither of them looked at me when they said it. The servers moved quickly, their trays balanced with glasses of champagne. Twice they passed our table without stopping. When a plate finally landed before me, the chicken was already cold. I ate a few polite bites, though the food tasted like dust. From the main hall came laughter, then clinking glass. Someone made a toast. The microphone caught a young man's voice. "To the couple who found each other in a city of strangers." Another voice added, "And to those who couldn't be here." Cheers. The guests near me chuckled. But one woman at the next table said, "I heard someone's mom got lost on the way here." Lost, another replied, "How do you get lost with GPS these days?" Their laughter was bright and short, like breaking glass. I folded my napkin over my lap and pressed my hands together to keep from shaking. A part of me wanted to stand, to leave quietly, to let the world of satin and wine forget I had existed. But another part, the older, quieter self that had spent decades holding a household together, refused to move until I saw my daughter once more. When the music shifted again, the guests rose from their tables for the photos. Through the archway, I could see Isolde and Keaton walking down the aisle a second time for the photographer. She lifted her veil, laughing, her arm threaded through his. Keaton's gaze swept the room. For a brief second, his eyes paused just long enough to meet mine through the open space between us. Confusion flickered there, almost recognition. Then he turned back to smile for the camera, unaware that the truth he was missing was sitting less than 20 feet away, watching from the edge of his new life. The crowd began to settle after the photographs. The laughter dimmed, replaced by the rustle of dresses and chairs scraping lightly against the floor. I remained seated, keeping my gaze on the screen that mirrored the main room. A woman with silver hair took the empty chair beside me. Her perfume was faint jasmine and something older, maybe cedar. She smiled politely. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "It's quieter here." "Not at all," I replied. My voice surprised me. It sounded small, almost childlike. "I'm Etta Pike," she said, extending her hand. "Old friend of the Morell family." I shook her hand. "Selah Kincaid." Her eyes softened. "Kincaid, as in the bride's mother," I said. She froze. "Oh, I must have misheard." "You said her mother—" "Yes." For a long moment, she studied me, her expression shifting from disbelief to unease. "Mrs. Kincaid, you're sitting all the way back here. I thought the front rows were for— I was told I'm in overflow room B," I said gently. "It's fine." Etta's mouth opened as if to protest, but she stopped herself. She looked toward the main room, where Isolde and Keaton were greeting guests. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Something's not right. Excuse me one moment." Before I could answer, she rose and slipped through the archway. A minute later, I saw her speaking quietly to Keaton. He listened, head tilted, confusion deepening across his face. Then he glanced toward the back of the hall, scanning until his eyes found me. He approached quickly, his steps uncertain. "Mrs. Kincaid." I stood, steadying myself. "Yes, I'm Keaton. I thought you were ill. Isolde said you couldn't make it. We sent the RSVP email weeks ago and I never received an invitation email." I said, "Only this." I handed him my phone. The message from my daughter filled the screen. "Follow this address. Mom, that's where the wedding is." He stared at it, his brow tightening. "This is a screenshot, not a link." "I know," I said quietly. The color drained from his face. His jaw worked once, then stilled. "She sent you." "Here." "Yes." Etta returned, her gaze moving between us. Keaton exhaled slowly, as though trying to steady something breaking inside him. He handed the phone back with a trembling hand. "Mrs. Kincaid," he said softly, "I need to understand what's happened." And as he walked toward the microphone stand at the front of the hall, I knew understanding was no longer the same as keeping the peace. Keaton returned to the front of the hall, but he didn't pick up his place beside my daughter. He bent over the sound table, speaking quickly to a staff member, Nomi Vargas. The coordinator approached with her tablet. I couldn't hear the words, only saw the small exchange, his hand pointing, her hesitant nod. Then he looked down at his phone, scrolling fast, stopping, scrolling again. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. The string quartet began to play the first notes of the processional. Guests straightened, ready for the ceremony to resume. But Keaton raised his hand. The music faltered and stopped. He walked toward the microphone, the air tightening around him. His voice, when it came, was calm and steady, but the quiet in the room was sharper than the sound itself. "Before we say our vows," he began, "there's something everyone here should know." Isolde's smile froze. "Keaton," she whispered. But he didn't look at her. He turned toward the guests. "When we planned this day, I asked that Selah Kincaid, my future mother-in-law, be seated with my parents. I confirmed it by email 2 weeks ago. That message is still on my phone." He held it up. "But today I learned that someone changed her seat assignment to an overflow room. And more than that, she was sent the wrong address entirely." A low murmur spread through the tables. Isolde stepped forward, her bouquet trembling slightly. "That's not true. There must have been a mistake." Keaton's tone remained even. "The address came in a screenshot from your phone. No live link. Nomi." Nomi hesitated, glancing at her screen. "The seating edits came from Miss Kincaid's account. I have the timestamps." The words landed like small stones hitting glass. The chatter died. Isolde's voice sharpened. "I was trying to fix things last minute. You know how chaotic weddings are. You fixed them," Keaton said quietly, "by sending your mother to an empty field." A few guests gasped. Others looked down at their hands. My daughter's jaw tightened. Color rose in her cheeks. "Stop this," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We can talk later." Keaton's eyes were cold, not cruel, just resolved. "No, Isolde. I can't stand here and speak vows about honesty and love while your mother sits at the back of the room you built to exclude her." For a moment, even the air seemed to pause. Nomi's hand hovered over her clipboard. "Do you want me to continue the schedule?" Sir Keaton shook his head. "No, the schedule doesn't mean anything now." He turned slightly, finding me through the crowd. His voice softened, though the microphone still carried it. "Mrs. Kincaid, I'm sorry you were treated this way. You shouldn't have been." The silence that followed was heavy enough to make every breath sound like confession. Isolde stood motionless beside the altar, her perfect posture collapsing under a truth she could no longer rearrange. Keaton stepped away from the microphone. His voice dropped low, but it carried through the stillness. "I can't start a life built on lies." The words hit the room like a door closing. Someone near the back let out a small gasp. Isolde's bouquet slipped from her hands and fell onto the polished floor. "Keaton, please," she said, her voice trembling. "You're humiliating me. We can fix this." He shook his head. "Not we. You." She turned to me then, eyes wild, searching for the mother who had always stepped in, always smoothed over the mess. "Mom, please, fix this. Tell them you misunderstood. Say it was a mistake." For the first time, I didn't move toward her. My hands stayed at my sides. "I'm done fixing what you break," I said softly. She stared at me as if I'd spoken in another language. "You can't just stand there. I'm your daughter. I know exactly who you are," I said, "and I love you enough to stop pretending this is love." The silence grew heavier. Keaton turned to the officiant. "There won't be a ceremony today." Then to the guests, his voice steady. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry." People began to rise slowly, murmuring, avoiding our eyes as though shame were contagious. I took one last look at my daughter, her face pale beneath the makeup, her lips pressed into disbelief, and then I turned toward the exit. Each step felt deliberate, my heels clicking against the floor like a metronome counting down to peace. Outside, the light was softer. Rafi stood near the curb, leaning against his car. Etta waited beside him, her expression kind but wordless. "Are you all right, Mrs. Kincaid?" Rafi asked quietly. I nodded. More than I thought I'd be. Etta reached for my hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen fully, painfully, beautifully seen as the doors of the life I had carried too long finally closed behind me. A week passed beneath steady Portland rain. Etta let me stay in her guest room, a small space filled with lavender-scented quilts and the hum of her old clock. The days blurred into quiet tea in the morning, long walks when the rain softened, and silence when it didn't. One afternoon, Etta brought in the mail. "Something for you," she said, handing me a white envelope. The handwriting stopped me. It was my daughter's careful, rounded, unchanged since high school. I opened it slowly. The first lines were all explanations she had panicked. She hadn't meant harm. She'd been under pressure. Then the tone shifted. Fragile, almost childlike. "I don't know why I did it. Mom, I just didn't want to feel judged that day. I'm sorry." A smaller card fell out. It was the business card of a counseling clinic downtown. On the back, she had written, "I made an appointment. I hope that means something." I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Etta stood in the doorway. "You don't have to answer right away," she said. "I already know what to say," I replied. That evening, I sat at Etta's kitchen table and wrote my reply. I told Isolde I wanted her to continue therapy once a week, for at least 3 months before we spoke again. I told her that forgiveness would depend on honesty, not guilt. I ended the letter with the truth. I wished someone had told me years ago. Love without respect turns into pity, and I won't live on that again. When I sealed the envelope, Etta placed her hand on mine. "You did right," she said. Later, Rafi joined us for supper. I set out the fine china I had once wrapped for a wedding that never happened. The plates gleamed softly under the kitchen light. We ate simply soup, bread, laughter that sounded like healing. For the first time, the china was being used for what it was meant to hold, not ceremony, but company. Months passed, the kind that moved quietly, like pages turning themselves. I had grown used to the sound of rain on my new apartment windows, to evenings that ended with tea instead of tension. One morning, as I sorted through the mail, a small envelope caught my eye. Inside was a photograph. Isolde stood outside the counseling clinic, holding my letter in her hands. Her face looked tired, but not the kind of tired that comes from pretending, it was the kind that comes from trying. On the back she had written, "Still going, still learning." I held the photo a long time. My first instinct was to call her, to bridge the silence we had agreed upon, but I didn't. I simply smiled, tucked the picture between the pages of my journal, and let the quiet mean what it needed to. That evening, I stepped onto my porch. Rafi had come by a week earlier to install a new brass lamp near the railing. The base was engraved, "Built by truth, kept by respect." When the light came on, the glow spread across the wooden boards and touched my hands. It wasn't bright, just steady, the kind of light that doesn't ask to be noticed. Etta's laughter drifted from inside as she washed the dinner plates, and I realized how full the air felt without being heavy. I whispered into the dusk, "This time, I won't wait for an invitation. I'll build my own home of love." The river below caught the last glint of daylight and carried it downstream. slow and sure, because the right address was never a place, it was peace.